All right, another episode of the Conveyor Cast, and today we've got a great one talking about industry-specific comms in a fascinating industry, waste management, with David Berg from CommanderAI. How's it going, David?
Hey, pretty good, Quinn. Happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit about how you launched your business, how you thought about your business's vision when you got
Yeah,
started.
absolutely. So my background's in the waste management space. I was a garbage truck salesman for 4 years, sold garbage trucks across the US and Canada to some of the largest waste haulers in the country, from Waste Management to Republic Services, and did really well, did 100 million in sales in the space. And what I learned throughout that cycle was just many fundamental issues and fragments within the sales funnel, specifically within waste management. It's a very old school industry. Pen and paper, Excel sheets are heavily reliant on. No real adoption of any CRM or lead generation tools. And so with the launch of Commander, sought to build the first and only fully intelligent sales platform that doesn't just help you get new business, but also helps you manage your current pipeline.
And how long ago was that?
We launched in February of last year, so just about 13 months old.
Fantastic. And how's progress going so far?
Yeah, it's great. We've been growing faster than I probably initially anticipated. We initially started relatively bootstrapped, raised a little bit of money from family and friends, some angel investors, sort of built out our initial V1 of the products, took that to market, got some feedback, developed it a bit further. Then we raised a little bit more capital to build out sort of our core team here in Santa Monica. We launched to market in about December of last year, done a little over 250K in ARR to date. And so we're going pretty quickly, and now raising our seed raise to continue to scale growth and build out our team.
Right on. I'm going to pin your tile here. There we go.
Yeah.
So you're selling garbage trucks. There's a bit of a, for folks who have been in entrepreneurship for a long time, or folks just getting into entrepreneurship, what I find is that there's been sort of this resurgence of what they call sweaty jobs. There's this influencer called Nick Huber. He basically is a storage business entrepreneur. There's another Instagram, I forget what her name is, but she basically says messy jobs, sweaty jobs. And you know, I always tell my clients that there is a premium in doing things that are not sexy, and there are discounts in doing things that are very sexy. And so thinking of sort of being an influencer, content marketing person, or advertising, you could think of that as like a, you know, desirable type of role. Whereas a lot of folks who end up making tons and tons of money, making a lot of impact in industry, are places where you don't necessarily first go. And so what are your thoughts on that, David?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When I initially had the idea for the concept and the business, ran it by friends, family, venture capitals, investors. Like, you're a young guy, you're in your 20s, you know, why not go build a restaurant or a social club or something more fun and sexy? And I said, look, I could do all those things maybe, but I'm building up a company and a product not because I have a desire to be cool or to, you know, end up on Forbes 30 under 30, but to make a great impact in this world to customers that desperately need a product. And sure, as a byproduct, I'll make a ton of money as well. But one of my first mentors always taught me, if your driving force is money, as soon as things become challenging, you're going to question and do something else. And so we've had many challenges in this year and a month period, but the desire to drive real value in a product that this market desperately needs is always, you know, superseding that. And so, yeah, I love non-sexy verticals. I think that's really the future of tech. You know, there's a lot of great deep tech companies now, but I think there's a ton of industries that have just been completely overlooked, and that's where we look to play.
100%. And just to put a little more color on your professional background, being the founder now, being the leader, did you come from sort of like a blue collar background, would you say, selling garbage trucks, or were you more like you found an opportunity out of school? Like how much have you learned when it comes to business leadership, even just tools and technology, AI, all of that stuff?
Yeah, great question. So my parents, they run a nonprofit organization Wouldn't necessarily call myself growing up blue collar, largely because many of the people that I grew up with and was surrounded by were very affluent and very successful. Some of the most successful in the world from a very young age. And so was always around them, introduced to them as a child, as a young adult. So always had that desire and wanting this to be part of that ecosystem. How I got into the trucking space was sort of by chance. One of my family friends from a very young age was starting a new business. I'd always wanted to work for him. He's like, look, I have a role for you here in Santa Monica. I was living in New York at the time, relatively fresh out of school. I was a personal trainer, so remotely different worlds. Took advantage of it, started as his assistant, worked my way into sales, and then became a sales leader within the industry. But I guess it's like kind of blue collar by choice as opposed to, blue collar being sort of born into it. But I love this waste industry. I think it's one of the best in the world. And so blue collar, white collar, I'm happy to be here.
It's definitely interchanged. It doesn't quite work as a label anymore. There's lots of extremely well, what's the meme right now? Every MBA student or business graduate is trying to find like a Midwestern trucking business or something like that.
Exactly.
No longer Silicon Valley or whatever. Like it's just private equity or search funds. So hot right now, search funds.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, that's fantastic. So give me a little bit of color on waste management overall. So what's happening? What should the average person interested in business know about this sector? Some things that I know are that waste management is a behemoth. There's some very big operators out there that generally run a lot of different things. I know that it's probably a bit of a laggard when it comes to technology adoption, but it's probably going through a generational shift as younger family members take over family businesses and are finally able to grab the keys and introduce new technology, new systems using, not just AI. You're doing an AI business, but even just, my buddy's construction business is like, yeah, we've got a CRM now. We're using HubSpot. I'm like, wow, welcome to 2012, dude. That's great. And then another thing that I saw in the news recently was, not to make it political, but the judges ruled that the Clean Water Act, which I know is a big one in the United States, doesn't mean that the water needs to be clean. So that probably creates some private market opportunities at some point, I believe.
Definitely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I'll chime in on the industry as a whole. I think to your point, definitely lacking technically. With that said, there are behemoths in the space. So WM, formerly Waste Management, the largest. There's around 5 to 6 other players, mostly publicly traded. Republic Services, GFL, Toronto-based company. They sort of control majority of the industry, but thankfully enough, and as a playing to Commander here, they control mostly the residential market. So the residential market is, me and you leaving trash that's at our apartment or house. They come and pick it up. We don't deal with it. We pay, whatever the monthly fee is and forget about it. Where it becomes a little bit more intricate and exciting is within the commercial landscape. That can be everything from hazardous waste, medical waste, construction cleanup sites. And that's where we play. And so most of Commander's clientele and target customers are those sort of regional players that are picking up either at the local hospitals, the local pizzerias. That opportunity is endless in the sense that it's really on a case-by-case basis. So if you're a local restaurant, in most cities, with the exception of the ones that have sort of government contracts, you can basically choose your own waste management provider. And so companies within the space can use Commander to identify new business opportunities. And even though there's a pre-existing hauler already servicing, there's always an opportunity for an upsell or for a new bidding opportunity. And so as much as there are behemoths and it's a very monopolistic industry, every year there are more and more waste haulers, which sort of seems counterintuitive. Largely being whenever a company gets acquired, another one pops up. It's kind of like whack-a-mole. And so the industry is always growing. It's recession-proof. The more people that are born naturally and the bigger the population gets, the more trash will be disposed. And so I don't see this industry slowing down anytime soon.
Love it. Yeah, I've been, everything from, kitchen grease replacing, oil, things like that. I've seen technology come on. There's deep tech coming online with things like digesters for biogas, things like that. Can you tell me more about what a typical client, what you do with a typical client?
Yeah.
And what Commander does specifically?
Yeah, sure. So most of our clients, again, not typically using any sort of tech for their sales landscape. And so the initial conversation is typically probably easier than another sales pitch would be. It's, hey, we're not looking to replace anything. We understand you're looking to grow your geographic reach. By using the Commander tool, we can, one, identify the areas you should be selling to, build that prospecting list. So that's where we come in. We'll say, you're serving Nevada and Arizona. There's opportunity for you to move into the California market. These are all the customers in that area that you should be serving based off these metrics, based off their reach, based off the current hauler that's there, current government contracts that are in place or lack thereof. And now let's go ahead and provide you with that contact information and generate an email and LinkedIn messaging campaign. So we'll do everything from building the prospecting pipeline, engaging the clients directly, and then even booking meetings directly on their calendars. And so from their perspective, it's like, hey, we're not replacing the salespeople, which I think even as AI gets more and more advanced, the best humans will sort of prevail, and everybody else will have to work a little bit harder. And so we're not replacing their sales team, but rather we're saying, hey, instead of going door to door, and which is what they're doing today, and knocking on restaurants and nail salons and handing out business cards, let us do the grunt work and let you show up for the meeting and close the client the same way that you would today.
Right on. So it sounds like you've taken a lot of the best practices from the previous role you had. You've basically gone out with starting your own thing and sort of duplicating a bunch of those processes using AI and just modernizing the sales process, increasing qualification. And you're probably taking sort of the sales sheets or the offerings and just using that to generate new business rather than the company hiring with new headcount.
Exactly. Yeah. Because aside from the salaries that they're paying, there's training involved, there's benefits, are they good salespeople? Are they not good salespeople? There's churn. And so all of that is time and money. And unfortunately, within this industry, if you're a waste hauler, you don't have that much time. Again, you're either growing and being acquired, or you're getting stolen all your business and falling apart. And so time is always of the essence for them. And I think that plays into our sales cycles for why they've been so quick. It's like, we need something like this yesterday, and finally somebody's come with a solution that is also affordable relatively, that is cheaper than hiring a salesperson and still allows me to expand my market. So I'd say timing is good, and I'd also throw in a lot of the legacy guys are retiring now, and so guys in their 20s and 30s are coming in more tech savvy, familiar with LLMs, obviously using ChatGPT, and that's playing to our benefit, and that the learning curve isn't as wide as, hey, truck guy, here is tech that you don't understand, and now pay us tens of thousands of dollars for it. It's a little bit more familiar to them.
Love it. Yeah. What I'm really hearing is you're establishing trust with your clients by being something to add on top of what they're already doing. You're not going in being prescriptive, telling them that you can do things better. Just you want to show them that what you're capable of doing, and hopefully teach them, or if they're open to it, or if they just care about the results, just close more deals for them, right?
Exactly. That's you nailed it on the head. Don't tell the client what to do. We're here if you need us. We can add value in any way you'd like us to, but we're not going to intend or convince you that we know your business better than you do, because that's never the case.
How much has So at Community Company, I'm always trying to help people build up their audiences. It's not just about going out and finding net new people out in the wild. I really think that growth comes from better managing your existing relationships, understanding each of your different stakeholders more. It's a game of inches and multiple touch points. How do you build trust? I'm going to ask you about how you build trust with people. How do they give you a shot? But I want to lead it by asking you about how much people listen to you or sit up because you've focused in on waste management as a customer segment? Do people pick up your call specifically for that reason?
I would say it's solely and only because of that reason. I think a large reason why other tools have been unsuccessful in this industry is it's like, hey, we sell to the software companies of the world and the Trinets of the world and the healthcares of the world, and we also want to get your business. And then there's no feeling of personalization or special treatment, which is what's needed in this industry. Again, I come from the space, so a lot of the customers that I'm selling to, they've known me as the truck guy. They've known me as somebody who sold them, fleets of trucks for their operations. And so there's that familiarity, there's that level of trust, but more importantly, understanding. They know that I understand their pain points. Then I'm not coming from Silicon Valley with a software company and saying, I want to make billions of dollars off of your business. It's more so, hey, I'm with you guys. I've been there. I've been in the truck. I know how it feels. I know how it looks. And here's a specific and customized solution for you.
I always tell people that, leading with content marketing, developing trust is all about showing that you're native to that space. So if you live in, blockchain world or Web3 world, you have to I've seen Web3 spell Web 3.0, and that instantly is like an indicator that person doesn't live in that town, does not live in that world.
Right.
And so you brought up a fantastic point that niching down, like actually, it seems more, you are actually a native, but to waste management. But if you were to be launching a business and work specifically on finding those early adopters, you would want to. I'm thinking of a business. There was a really good The Hustle newsletter around someone who rolled up pool companies basically, and so they just focused on their leading offer was around pool openings. So they just had technology and an app and just leveraged the heck rather than out of like a secretary or a text or something, like just use technology to develop trust, communicated that's what you offer, then got in and expanded. And that's what I'm hearing from you. What I'm also hearing is that not just doing that, because I think someone who is coming from outside that world could possibly succeed that way. But I'm also hearing that you have relationships that you can leverage into new relationships, and you have a track record. So how do you get that out there? What's sort of the communications that you use? Do you have content that you've built showing that you live in waste management, Ville or Utopia or something like that?
Yeah, thankfully a lot of the time in the industry was documented. And so everything from customer meetings to me driving trucks in New Philadelphia, Ohio, where our factory was, to manufacturing photos of the trucks being built themselves is what we're leveraging to show our domain expertise within the space. And then a lot of it is sort of unspoken. As I mentioned, having worked with these companies for many years, the name is familiar. And so doubling down on that, having the local Waste Today, Waste Dive, sort of the papers for the waste management space, happy to write about us, has also sort of promoted our marketing approach. But again, thankfully a lot of it's really just relationship based. Expos are big, right? There's sort of two major waste trade shows every year, the Waste Expo in Las Vegas. That's where you sort of get together with everybody. But we haven't done too much on sort of content publishing from a YouTube or a website perspective, more so natural sort of funnels.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to think about producing quality enough content to make people be interested to sit up and watch it, basically. Just because, again, kind of going back to like the glamorous, like the people that you're probably targeting generally are likely set up in their ways a little bit, like they've been doing it for 30 or 40 years, for at least this is some sort of like customer profile. And so they're not exactly like sitting down with a newspaper reading about waste management today every morning, or and so I bet a bunch of your content would need to be informational or sharing horizontally best practices, having like thought leadership or sort of executive huddles on best practices, maybe even like sharing new regulations or lack of regulations that are coming online that open up new opportunities. things like that could probably be helpful for nurturing relationships in your space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right.
Let's see. What in terms of people in your business, how have you built your business? You said it's a year or just a bit more old. Let's talk about mentors, core team members, founding partners, family. Tell me about sort of bringing those folks online as this idea turned into a real thing.
Yeah, good question. So the first thing that I did was identify sort of the 10 people closest to my network or one step away that had familiarity with building tech companies, maybe within the waste management space themselves. And so the first person that I went to, again, my first sort of boss who I worked for, founder of Battle Motors, current chairman, he basically has been the benefactor for a lot of what we built, mentored me in starting a tech company and building it from the ground up. So a lot of credit goes to Mike directly. Aside from him, on our board of advisors, names like Sean Rad, the founder of Tinder, Zohar Alone, who founded Checkpoint, that sold for a couple $1 billion several years ago. And so guys that have either in their space, have built companies from zero to unicorn companies, have been directly involved within the product build out, even everything from managing employees to finding the right talent. I've leaned heavily on them. This is my first go around at it. And so a lot of the sort of questions are things you figure out on the way. But thankfully, as far as the baseline of, do this, raise this much money, build out this core team, this is where you find people, has been helped by our advisory board, which has been great.
And how do you, tactically, how do you engage with them? Are they kind of like, do you book formal things? Do you send memos out? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, good question. So initially it was more formal. I'd set up sometimes calls with the entire team, sometimes calls with just myself and my CTO, with one of our advisors. What I've seen though, that the most valuable and best use of their time and hours is coming up with a clear sort of question or problems or multiple problems, things that need sort of immediate guidance on, and then just asking those directly, as opposed to just going on a 20 to 30 minute call and just having a general conversation where maybe there's one or two takeaways that you could have gotten in a 45-second email. So I've been sort of skewing more towards that perspective, and the insights are usually deeper. And then second to that is just showing them and then asking questions. So, hey, here's where our product is today. This is the feedback we're getting. What specific changes will you make? Like Sean from Tinder said, I moved this button here, right? He's a little bit more meticulous, and that's where his strong suit is. And the customers probably want this, and if customers ask for this, make sure that there's many of them asking for the same thing before doing it, right? So little sort of nuanced areas of focus is where he's been super helpful. But that approach is what we've done now. But again, it's only been a year, so we might go back to formal as we grow. Maybe team huddles when we have 150 employees here. But for now, with a team of 10, this has worked so far.
It's good. And tell me more about your team. How are you establishing your culture? What are you using to sort of set the vision, stay in touch with everyone?
Yes, good question. It's a daily thought. It's usually the first thing that comes to mind, as long as there's not a pressing issue like raising capital or customer dissatisfaction. The next thing on the list is how are employees feeling? How are they excited? Our culture is very nonchalant in the sense that I don't want to micromanage anybody. I think that micromanaging never works. You might think people are doing what you want them to do, but they're just telling you what you want to hear. And so I've always believed that there's certain core things, getting things done in a timely manner, being in office almost all the time, most days of the week. But as far as 9 to 5, 11 to 6, we have employees that are working at 2 o'clock in the morning, waking up at 9 a.m., coming to the office at 11. That's totally fine with me. We have an offshore team in India, and so if they're up 2-3 hours into the night and then coming in later, it would be crazy for me to ask them to be here from 15 to 17 hours a day. So that's as far as like the day-to-day. Slack has been great. Daily updates. I'm very transparent with what's happening on the back end of things. So just because Michael's on this call as well, he's on our sales team, but there's just there's no White Castle. What's happening on the investor side, I share with employees. they have complete visibility into customers, dissatisfaction, satisfaction. And I think that the best companies are built when all of the employees not just feel like they have an impact, but are actually making an impact way beyond their sort of department or area of focus. So we're all founders, although, you know, I'm running the company. I don't see it that way.
Yeah, really solid. Sounds like you're setting the culture by example, being just a strong executor, being there time in, time out, giving people a lot of responsibility and sort of an open door policy as sort of things probably form and aren't quite formed right now. What have you learned? So one thing I've consistently seen in my career are that really solid sales professionals, they get a bit bogged. Sorry, not to hurt your feelings at all, David, here, but they kind of get a little short-sighted around the march towards the next quarter, whether it's for good or for bad. Sometimes for bad because they can, you know, sometimes rest on some really good wins, some closing some deals and sort of ride it out, or not invest in sort of this continuous improvement on things that don't show results beyond, like, within the quarter. And so has there been anything around executing on your vision that has been a surprise as a business owner versus you know, a top salesperson?
Yeah, I'll separate the two. Even when I was just in sales, the wins were celebrated for maybe 30 minutes to an hour. Never really got that sort of full sense of accomplishment until the job is done, which, as you know, their job is never done. So it's sort of an everlasting loop. Not to say that you can't enjoy the growth, but I never rest on my laurels. I never have. It's just not how I'm built. As far as, you know, running this company, different from being in sales. When you're in sales, you pretty much get to do all the fun stuff, right? You're either closing deals or waiting to close your next deal. But in running this company, most of my time is spent doing things that I don't want to do. You know, talking to the Secretary of State, running payroll, filing taxes, just a lot of really crappy stuff, you know? So I'd say that's something that I didn't think about much, you know, building this company, but it's part of the game. So, you know, like, you gotta love it.
Yeah, it's funny. I heard a podcast with a really large fintech founder, and he was talking about how big the company got, and he was still having to sit and verify small things like credit card ownership with banks,
Right,
things like that, like just verifying or just dealing with. It's particularly bad in Canada, which is both good and bad, I think, with we don't have that Silicon Valley Bank issue here necessarily, but just, and I've had another founder tell me, because he's grown a very formidably large sales organization, and he's like, when stuff hits my desk, it's like a giant, he's like a elephant crapped on my desk. Like, he's like, he's like, if it's on my desk, then it's like complicated, complex, like no right answer, problem or thing that needs to be done. Whereas, you know, top salespeople, you know, especially, you can get in that situation where signing the deal, you feel that reward, but
Exactly.
fulfillment is like, you have to make, you know, is the cash in the bank? Like a lot of junior people, you know, signing a deal does not mean the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. Being a salesperson is very hard, but there's at least a moment where you can take a sigh of relief. As a founder, as an owner, the moment that the sale is closed, that's when it all starts to fall on you. And so, is the customer happy? Are they paying for the next month? Did they sign the contract? Did they skip this? Did they change? You know, and so then you deal with all of that. So your sales guy can enjoy the benefit, and then you know, you're kind of dealing with, like you said, the crap afterwards. But again, I think that if you're going to start a company, if you're going to start any business, you just expect that, you know, and ultimately you reap the benefits of it if you're successful. So you can complain now, or you can celebrate later, but the choice is yours. So.
What's your yeah, you're bringing up a good point as we round the bend here. We talked a lot about your business, but let's talk about and how you lead your business in communications. Let's talk about sort of like professional, personal stuff too. So what are you involved with outside of work? What communities are you a part of? And maybe to tee this off, some people, talking about sort of the job is never done as a founder. I'm actually someone who believes you can't do it forever. There's very few people who can continue to do it forever because of just constantly being on. And in order to perform at a high level, which sounds like you are trying to be the best in the country or even the world at doing this, that means that there's compromises that you have to make with other aspects of your life potentially in order to put time as it. It's one thing that I heard Kobe Bryant. Like Kobe Bryant is kind of an interesting character in professional sports because he's kind of a crabby, kind of comes off as like a crabby guy, but he has this interview, not to quote it exactly, but he's like, do you know how much I've sacrificed to be as good as I am? And I always kind of think about that. So I kind of threw a whole lot at you. What resonates with you there?
Yeah, I think I'll touch on a few things you asked about. Like this, aside from the business, other involvements. I involve myself in many other things. I do run a podcast myself as well. Just largely out of desire for connection, not so much financial gain by any means. But it's called the Success Series. Essentially, I merge the world of success and spirituality, interview founders, celebrities all over the world. And so that's just one thing that I do. I host events for other like-minded young professionals also seeking spirituality. So I'm very interested in the world of spirituality and how they merge with business. But to your point, and I'll bridge the two, many things have had to take a back seat, and especially in the last few months as we've grown and things are more mature than they used to be. I think everything takes second seat, whether it's relationships, whether it's just your own sort of satisfaction of other things. Like everything else in life I've sort of put on the back burner just to get this done. To your point, I don't think I could do this forever at this rate, but in speaking with other founders, there is an inflection point where although the workload doesn't decrease, it only increases. The company is now at a path of profitability. You've taken some chips off the table. And so although the day-to-day work is the same or greater, you're not, sort of looking at the payroll and saying, are we going to cover 6 months from now? Do we have enough runway? Our customers going to stay on? So I'm not there yet. My hope is that, in the next 6 to 12 months, we're profitable. The business is in somewhat of an autopilot mode, although it never will be, but you know what I mean? And then maybe then I can just at least sleep better at night. But again, it's something that I kind of knew going into it. But yeah, I don't think there's a balance when you're early stage startup, especially if you take capital.
I like that thought process. On the one hand, folks do say that startups or venture-backed companies are the only ones that get more complicated and faster the bigger they grow. So there might be a little bit of negative tension around hoping that you get there sooner than later. But you sound like someone who has a lot of perspective and a lot to be thankful for. And so if you can, see that you're putting this time in now and achieve that goal, hopefully hoping you do, letting the outcome go, that you can actually adopt that perspective and be sort of grateful and wake up every day without sort of cortisol coursing through your veins or whatever.
I'll just say that's a great point. You mentioned one of my mentors taught me from a spiritual lens early on that no energy ever goes to waste. And so that's probably the singular thing that's allowed me to continue to push through on a day-to-day without being miserable. It's that, of course, the outcome that I want for this company is what I'm sought on every single day. But knowing in the back of your mind that if this isn't it, that energy will go somewhere else, whether it's the next business, whether it's a pivot of this current business, but not to ever feel like all the work that you're doing now is somehow going to disappear and never come back to you. And again, no data or science to back that claim, but I think just like thinking in a somewhat more spiritual lens, it's helpful for any founder. Like this work is leading to something. You might not see it yet, but it'll come, at its time. So that's helped me.
It's really good. I have more questions about the spirituality, just sort of my own journey around that. But perhaps we could save it for another time.
For round 2. Yeah, maybe a part 2. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks a lot. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Maybe plug your podcast as we wrap up. This is a great conversation. We touched on we touched on sort of waste management as like and the idea of niching down, but also being a native person within the world that you're building a business. We touched on working with mentors and making sure that you are maximizing your time with them by being very clear on the ask, and also just sort of accepting and not wanting to build the wheel over and over again, like knowing that they have your best interest, and probably by selecting really great mentors. And we also talked about sort of getting to the next level. So mindset around being a founder and making sure your team is culturally aligned with that. So all your behaviors line up with that too. So really appreciate it, David. And if there's anything you want to plug, go for it.
Yeah, thanks for the time, Quinn. I'll just plug real quick, Success Series podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you're in the waste management space, CommanderAI.com, book a demo there. Also, not to plug myself, if you're a founder or wanting to be a founder, hit me up on LinkedIn, David Berg, or Instagram. Always happy to chat. So I've had a lot of mentors, although we're still early stage, a lot that I think I can sort of pass over, and feel free to reach out.